Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated to a medieval Pokémon world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 161, Cooking for Pokémon. Lucien handed the follow-up arrangements to Elif, who went off to discuss the details with Zack. When the door closed, only Lucien, Victini, and a few Pokémon remained in the office. Even though the territory has developed quickly, the population growth is still too slow. Lucien scrolled through his panel. Only a few prerequisite technologies remained before he could unlock the industrial era. With the school established and the newspaper launched, the people's satisfaction had risen sharply. He was close, so close to unlocking everything needed for industrialization. His only concern was whether the Industrial Revolution could progress with such a small population. The territory had barely 1,300 residents, many of whom were merchants who'd moved in from elsewhere. Well, one step at a time, Lucien murmured. Nini. Victini fluttered over and landed in front of him, gently urging him to rest. Lucien understood. He had run himself ragged the past few days, school, newspapers, writing early trainer textbooks, even staying up through the night. His Pokémon had watched him wear himself out, and all of them were worried. Alright, time to take a break. Lucien patted Victini's head. Want to visit father in the capital? Nini. Victini shook its head vigorously. The old king had already warned Victini not to return too often. The royal capital was full of spies, and if anyone discovered Victini was staying with Lucien, it could put Lucien in danger. So Victini had chosen to stay by his side. The old king was safe for now, Lucien mattered more. In that case, Lucien said, stretching a little, let's head home early. Just as he was leaving, a thought struck him. Since arriving in this world, he had never once cooked a proper meal for his own Pokémon. For a trainer, that was practically a disgrace. He immediately called for a maid and requested ingredients. Dragonite liked grilled fish. Victini loved cookies. Superior preferred berry pies. Larvesta liked roasted berries. The Minccino troop adored chestnuts and dried fruit. Kyurem didn't seem picky, except for its obsession with chilled watermelon. As for Golett, perhaps ghost-type energy counted as food? When the ingredients arrived, Lucien took them and headed home with Victini. The maid had even built a swing under the big tree so the Pokémon could play there during the day. As soon as Lucien opened the yard gate, he saw Larvesta happily swinging back and forth. Behind it, a confused Golett gently pushed the swing in stiff, robotic motions. Above them, 5 Minccino were lined up along a branch, nibbling on berries. Superior rested in the shadows like a noble guardian, head raised with quiet dignity. Dragonite stood off to the side, calling to Larvesta, clearly saying, my turn. Larav. Larvesta finally realized it had been hogging the swing for too long and hopped off reluctantly. Dragonite took the seat, only for the rope to snap less than 10 seconds later. Boom. The massive dragon landed squarely on its rear. Lucien. Victini covered its mouth, giggling. Nini. The laughter drew every Pokémon's attention. When they saw Lucien standing at the gate, all of them brightened instantly. Woo! Dragonite's expression flipped at once. It let out a pitiful cry and charged toward Lucien, trying to bury its head in Lucien's chest like it did when it was still a Dratini. Unfortunately, Dragonite had forgotten that it was now much larger than Lucien. It couldn't snuggle into his arms, so it simply hugged Lucien's entire body and whimpered dramatically. Lucien. Helpless, he patted Dragonite's back. Alright. I'll secure a stronger rope for you later. Dragonite weighed over 400 pounds now, ordinary rope didn't stand a chance. Hearing this, Dragonite immediately perked up. Woo! Good. Now look what I brought. Lucian raised the package in his hand. Dragonite leaned in to sniff it. Its eyes instantly gleamed. Woo! Fish. It smelled fish. There are fish, berries, and watermelon, Lucian said with a grin as he looked around at the eager faces. Come to think of it, none of you have ever tasted my cooking, have you? Well then, today, I'll show you what I can do. Woo! Minxai. Nini. Survey. All the Pokémon immediately perked up, tails wagging, wings fluttering, or eyes shining with excitement. Lucian stepped into the kitchen. The house was fully equipped, its own stove for cooking, a stone oven for bread and pizza, and neatly arranged utensils. Lucian handled the ingredients while Larvesta hopped forward to light the stove with a small, controlled ember. As he chopped vegetables and prepared fish, Lucian couldn't help but chuckle to himself. If I really do win this war, then thousands of years from now, will people form tour groups to visit Lucian's hometown? He could almost imagine the tour guide. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the kitchen where King Lucian cooked meals together with his Pokémon. The mental image was hilarious. Before long, a rich, savory smell filled the house. A full lunch spread covered the table: grilled river fish, roasted berries, sweet cookies, berry pie, and chilled watermelon. Lucian clapped his hands. All right, dig in. The Pokémon didn't need to be told twice. Woo! Dragonite inhaled the grilled fish like a starving sailor, eyes sparkling. Lucian's cooking was leagues above the plain stew they usually ate. Larvesta wagged its tail vigorously. Lucian's cooking was the best in the world. Nini. Victini happily munched on its little cookies, feet swinging back and forth. Superior lifted a slice of berry pie with elegant poise, nodded approvingly, and thought, a refined flavor, but the warmth behind it is what truly makes a Pokémon happy. Dalit didn't need food, but Lucian still placed a little offering in front of it. The little automaton simply blinked its glowing eyes and picked up the food with stiff, clumsy movements, as if trying to understand why others enjoyed this strange ritual. Off to the side, Kyurem observed quietly. Watching Lucian and the Pokémon gathered around the table, laughing, eating, smiling, Kyurem felt something stir within its ancient, icy heart. Perhaps, just as Lucian had said, this really was the right path for humans and Pokémon. Chapter 162. Twin Dragon City, the shock caused by the newspapers. In the Grand Castle at the heart of Twin Dragon City, a young man lay lounging on a soft, luxurious bed. Dressed in fine embroidered clothing, he reclined on one arm while several maids attended to him. One maid gently fed him peeled grapes. Another massaged his shoulders with delicate hands. With his eyes half closed, the young lord, Sharon, ruler of Twin Dragon City, asked lazily, Kron, have you seen anything new or interesting in the city lately? The butler at his side bowed. Reporting to Lord Sharon, nothing unusual has occurred in the territory. He paused, then added as if recalling something. However, a new group of merchants arrived recently. They brought several curious items from other regions. Oh? Sharon opened his eyes with genuine interest. What kind of items? One of them is something they call a newspaper, Kron replied. In addition, they brought fine white paper, as well as various goods produced by magical beasts, honey, wool, fruit juice, and more. Would you like me to fetch one for you? Sharon waved him off and stood. The maids immediately stepped forward to drape a robe over his shoulders. No need. Since there are so many novelties, I'll go see them myself. Without further delay, Sharon left the castle with Kron guiding the way. Though Twin Dragon City was not the largest territory in the kingdom, its population of over 60,000 made it a prosperous and lively place. Commoners bustled about the streets, and farmers were already leaving the town to tend their fields. Ahead, a crowd had gathered in front of a merchant's stand. My lord, that is where the merchants are set up, Kron explained. Sharon approached with mild curiosity. From within the crowd came enthusiastic shouts. Fresh honey and soft wool from Lucian City. Don't miss it. This honey is sweeter than sugar, this wool softer than silk. Only 50 copper coins a bottle. 50 copper coins? That's outrageous, someone exclaimed. The merchant laughed. This isn't ordinary honey. It's produced by the three-headed bee colonies, far richer and more nutritious. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Magical bees? Everyone knew about them. Some beekeepers had tried raising them, but their powerful queen would command the entire swarm to attack if she sensed danger. Sharon raised an eyebrow. Oh? Honey made by magical bees? I've never tasted that. Understanding the hint, Kron stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. Pack all of this honey for Lord Sharon. The merchant brightened instantly. A generous customer. Of course. As the honey was packed, Kron asked, "Do you also carry the item called newspaper?" Certainly. Would you like one, sir? A moment later, a freshly printed newspaper was placed into his hands. But before Kron could leave, the merchant produced a stack of immaculate, snow-white sheets. Kron froze. This is paper? Not parchment, paper. As white and flawless as polished ivory. You have a discerning eye, sir, the merchant said proudly. This is white paper, invented by my prince for writing. It's more elegant than parchment and much easier to carry. Kron touched the sheets with near reverence. Smooth. Light. Refined. It was unlike anything the kingdom had ever produced. Sharon stepped closer, intrigued by the butler's reaction. He picked up a sheet and examined it carefully. This truly is remarkable. The merchant, noticing Sharon's bearing, answered respectfully. We come from Lucian City. Lucian City. Sharon frowned and turned to Kron. Is there such a place within the kingdom? Never heard of it, Kron admitted. The merchant quickly explained. Lucian City lies northeast of Twin Dragon City, about half a month's journey on foot. It's a newly developed settlement. Our honey, our wool, our juices, our carpets, all of them come from there. Something felt wrong. Sharon narrowed his eyes. He had never heard of a place called Lucian City until today. Suspicious. My lord. Kron hesitated beside him, as if wanting to warn him further, but Sharon raised a hand and silenced him instantly. I'll take all these sheets of paper, Sharon declared with a dismissive wave. The merchant startled, eyes widening. My lord. These sheets cost over 100 gold coins. He hurried to explain, scrambling to present cheaper options. We also have lower-grade paper for writing and record-keeping. Far more affordable. He pulled out a stack of yellowish, rougher sheets. These ones are only 5 copper coins each. Sharon's expression turned disdainful. Did this merchant really think he cared about the price? Did he look like a man who couldn't afford ink, paper, or anything he desired? Only the pure, snow-white sheets were worthy of him and his noble station. The merchant, seeing his expression, dared not continue. He immediately began packing every last piece of the premium paper. On the way back to the castle, Kron finally spoke, worry evident in his tone. My lord, why purchase so much paper? Sharon didn't bother looking at him. My third uncle will appreciate it, he said simply. His third uncle was a renowned scholar, obsessed with books, records, and rare writing materials. Even Sharon, who had little interest in such things, could recognize the value of the sheets. His uncle would recognize it even more. Kron bowed. As you say, my lord. When they returned to the castle, Sharon immediately dismissed the attendants and carefully stored the pristine white paper in his study. Afterward, with a maid assisting, he sampled the honey produced by the magical beasts. The moment it touched his tongue, his eyes brightened. Rich. Smooth. Sweet without being sickly. A floral fragrance lingered, delicate yet unforgettable. Far superior to any honey he had tasted before. Is everything from this Lucian city of such high quality? Intrigued, Sharon reached for the newspaper. Though he enjoyed being pampered, he was an earl who had received formal noble education. Reading was not difficult for him. And for the first time in a long while, genuine curiosity stirred in him about the newspaper, about the paper it was printed on, and above all, about this mysterious Lucian city. He waved the maid aside. "I'll read it myself." Chapter 163, The Lord's Visit. The newspaper was printed on both sides, each side divided neatly into several sections. Sharon's eyes were naturally drawn to the largest headline. It described an event that had apparently taken place in this mysterious Lucian city. July 20th, year 149 of the Kingdom calendar. Celebrating the establishment of the royal newspaper. A message from His Highness Lucian. My dear subjects, thank you for your hard work this past year. Because of your efforts, Lucian City has become what it is today. Through this newspaper, I express my sincere gratitude. Let us continue working together to make Lucian City prosperous and strong. Lucian? Sharon narrowed his eyes. The name was unmistakable. Someone, within his kingdom, actually dared to call himself His Highness Lucian. Someone claiming a royal title without permission, openly publishing speeches to the public. And all this while the entire kingdom stood on the brink of collapse. To the south, Prince Landon had gathered a vast human army and a legion of enslaved Pokémon. To the north, Prince Lance had raised his own forces, supported by countless free Pokémon who voluntarily joined his cause. The kingdom was split. War was inevitable. And now, a third force had appeared. A lord with a new city, using the royal surname. A lord bold enough to speak publicly as if he were already a ruler. Sharon frowned. Could this Lucian be the Lucian I know? But he held back the conclusion. There were others in the kingdom who shared that name. He continued reading. Monster Trivia, Issue 1. Mareep, an electric-type magical beast, produces excellent wool for clothing and carpets. However, when Mareep evolves into Flaffy, and Flaffy evolves into Ampharos, they no longer grow wool. But the orb at the tip of Ampharos's tail emits a bright light at night, far brighter than a kerosene lamp. With it, we will never fear the dark again. Beneath the text was a vivid illustration of Ampharos radiating light like a living beacon. Sharon glanced at the bundle of wool Kron had bought earlier. So that was Mareep wool, and this lord uses magical beast for production? The honey, the wool, the juices, all of them must have come from a magical beast. How? How had this unknown lord managed that? Sharon's brows furrowed. He agreed with Prince Lance on one thing: humans and magical beasts should not enslave each other. Both sides were intelligent, dangerous, and prone to conflict. Yet this Lucian city seemed to be cooperating with the magical beast, peacefully. He kept reading. Then he froze. On the abolition of serfdom and redistribution of land, Prince Lucian announces, from this day forward, Lucian City shall have no slaves. Everyone shall live by their own effort. Sharon shot upright. This man has lost his mind. Kron blinked in confusion. What's wrong, my lord? Look at this. Sharon shoved the paper into his hands. Kron read it, and his expression shifted from surprise to alarm. Abolishing serfdom? Redistributing land? This wasn't reform. This was rebellion. My lord, Kron whispered, should we send word to Prince Lance? Sharon shook his head. Not yet. Prepare my horse. He clenched the newspaper tightly. I'm going to meet this Lucian myself. Yes, my lord. Lord, Lucian. Territory, Lucian City, Town. Population, humans, 1,386. Population, Pokémon, 425. Popularity, 95, thriving. Satisfaction, 15,680. Technologies unlocked: animal husbandry, fishing, pottery, clay figurines, papermaking. His gaze shifted to the technology tree. The final technology of the agricultural era, textile industry, had just unlocked. A soft chime rang in his head. A moment later, the long-awaited industrial era requirements appeared. Industrial Age Era Transition. Upon activation, the agricultural age will end, and the territory will officially enter the industrial age. New technologies unlocked: steam engine, factory, energy development, steam train. Requirements: 100,000 satisfaction, territory population greater than or equal to 50,000, public morale greater than or equal to 90. Ha! Lucian stared at the glowing panel, speechless for a full 3 seconds. No one had told him the era transition demanded that many conditions. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. After a moment, he steadied his thoughts. Well, it makes sense. An industrial age without population is meaningless, he murmured. Steam engines, factories, railways, this world was about to enter an age of explosive growth. But growth needed people, lots of them. Factories would need workers, railways would need builders, cities would need craftsmen, merchants, teachers, soldiers. Looks like I need to adjust the plan, Lucian thought, closing the panel. He had originally intended to develop slowly, step by step, and now? That wasn't possible. He needed people. Commoners, nobles seeking refuge, exiles, even escaped slaves, anyone longing for a better life. And the newspaper he had just created. Perfect for attracting them. It was time to start pulling population from every corner of the kingdom. Meanwhile, outside Lucian City, after days of travel, Lord Sharon and his steward Kron finally saw the silhouette of the town rising from the plains. My lord, that should be Lucian City up ahead, Kron said, shielding his eyes from the sun. Sharon narrowed his gaze. He would admit, some of this so-called Lucian's inventions were impressive. The blank white paper had delighted his scholarly uncle. The honey had become Sharon's new nightly indulgence, he even had a maid prepare honey tea every evening. But admiration was one thing. Impersonating a royal prince? Publishing public speeches under the royal surname? Claiming authority and abolishing serfdom? That was another matter entirely. Sharon gripped the reins of his horse. Today, he muttered, I will see exactly who this man is, and why he dares call himself Lucian. Chapter 164, Sharon's Shock and Envy. Lord Sharon, should I explain who we are and why we're here to the lord of this territory? The steward Kron asked. No need. Sharon narrowed his eyes as he stared at the town ahead. He wanted to see for himself who this man was. Someone who dared to impersonate Prince Lucian and even attempt to abolish slavery was not just bold, he was openly challenging the kingdom's foundations. That made him extremely dangerous. Sharon instinctively felt that this person could not possibly be the third Prince Lucian. According to everything he knew, Prince Lucian was still in the royal city, a prince raised inside the palace, detached from real governance. And above all, Prince Lucian was royalty. How could he possibly do something so self-destructive? Let's go, Kron. Sharon urged his horse forward. Yes, sir. The two rode slowly toward the city. Even before they reached the gate, they saw vast fields stretching out before them. Golden wheat covered the plains, nearly ripe for harvest. The warm breeze carried with it the scent of grain and the joy of abundance. Sir, what is this? Kron stared, startled and confused. The timing was wrong. By all logic, crops in their own territory were still green and far from harvest. Something was off. This place is strange. Sharon frowned. Just then, they spotted several farmers working in the fields. Kron, go ask what's going on. Sharon instructed. Understood. Kron approached a farmer resting beside the road, pretending to be a passerby. Uncle, looks like another good harvest this year. The farmer gave him a friendly smile. You're from out of town, aren't you? Eh? How did you know? Kron asked. This isn't just a good harvest this year. Every season here is a bumper crop. The farmer puffed out his chest proudly. Everyone in Lucian City knows this. Every season? Kron froze. That's right. The farmer nodded naturally. Kron's mind filled with questions. How are you doing this? And when we passed through other territories, their crops were still green. Nowhere is ready for harvest. That's thanks to His Highness Lucian's leadership. The farmer's eyes shone with gratitude. Kron stiffened when he heard the title His Highness. Within the kingdom, only members of the royal family could be addressed like that. Could this His Highness Lucian really be the third prince? But that shouldn't be possible. The third prince should still be in the royal city. And from all the intelligence they collected, Lucian was a prince who rarely touched politics, someone pampered by the old king and known for a carefree lifestyle. Someone like that could never have built such a territory. Unless the third prince had been hiding his true abilities? Shaken, Kron forgot to ask further and rushed back to Sharon. It can't be Lucian. Absolutely impossible. Sharon shook his head after thinking for a moment. If it were the third prince, then the second prince, Lance, would have noticed long ago. He would never leave such a place unmonitored. Kron, look at the magical beasts. Sharon pointed. Kron followed his gaze and saw several magical beasts standing beside farmers at the edge of the field. Sharon's expression darkened. In his own territory, commoners kept a careful distance from wild magical beasts. They were unpredictable and often dangerous. But here, farmers were interacting with them openly, without fear. Early harvests. Friendly monsters. Peace in the fields. Everything here felt unnatural. Let's keep going. We'll know what's happening once we're inside the town. Sharon said. Yes, sir. The two continued down the road and soon reached the town. The place was lively. Though not large, the town was clearly still under active construction. It wasn't yet at its full potential, but even so, the air carried a sense of rapid development and progress. The streets were paved with clean red bricks, a stark contrast to the primitive dirt roads common under lesser lords. The entire atmosphere felt more civilized. Sir, look. Kron suddenly pointed forward. Sharon looked up and froze. A squad of armored soldiers marched down the street in perfect formation. At a glance, it seemed like ordinary patrol duty. But trailing behind the soldiers were several magical beasts, walking obediently as if they were trained members of the patrol. Sharon was stunned. Kron was equally shocked. Had the soldiers tamed these magical beasts? Or, like King Lance they served, had the beasts chosen to join the army and fight for him to help him achieve his beliefs? Before the two could think further, the patrol of soldiers gradually disappeared into the distance. My lord, what is going on? Kron murmured. Sharon silently shook his head. If they had not never heard of Lucian before, they probably would have thought this was a place used by Prince Lance for experiments. The two walked along the clean and tidy red brick street, observing their surroundings as they went. Gradually, the further they went, the more prosperous the place became. Shops lined both sides of the street, inns, fruit stalls, blacksmiths, barbers, clothing stores, and the newspaper stalls they had seen before, and just like that, the number of magical beasts also increased. Pidove perched on rooftops. Purloin rested in women's arms. Herdier followed behind elderly men. Children led Snowford monsters on ropes. Some magical beasts even helped the humans. For example, Lilligant helped sell vegetables, Whimsicott acted as shop signs, and Buneri drew in customers. It looked less like a human town and more like a magical beast town. No, to be precise, it was a town where humans and magical beasts lived together. This thought flashed through Sharon's mind. The steward, Kron, beside him, also wore an expression of disbelief. Master and servant were utterly stunned by what they saw, and it took them a long time to collect themselves. Unknowingly, they had arrived at a more secluded place. Where is this? Sharon instinctively peered inside, and saw many boys and girls alongside magical beasts in a courtyard beyond the gate. The guard posted at the school entrance noticed the two and asked curiously. You two are? Hello, we came from another territory. May I ask where this place is? Kron asked. From out of town? The guard nodded in understanding, then smiled. This place? It's our school. All children of the right age in the territory can come here to study. A school? Kron was taken aback. But Sharon focused on the second hall, all children, and, connecting it to the Lord's rumored actions, asked almost involuntarily. Children of commoners and slaves too? Of course. His Highness Lucian advocates education for all. Every child can come here to learn. The guard's expression was full of gratitude. His own children would one day study here too. Madness. The lord of this place had gone completely mad. At this moment, Sharon felt certain that the news of the abolition of slavery in the newspaper was real. Sharon was horrified. Did this man know what he was doing? This action shook the very foundations of the kingdom. If lowly slaves became educated, who would willingly serve nobles in the future? Not to mention him, if other nobles learned of this, they would surely rise up against Lucian. Before Sharon could speak, the guard continued. However, we don't have any slaves here anymore. This is a law personally issued by His Highness Lucian. From now on, everyone is a free man. The guard grinned widely, gratitude written all over his face whenever he mentioned His Highness Lucian. No more slaves? Sharon stared at the guard, thinking bitterly. What is the difference between you, a gatekeeper, and the slaves who serve nobles? The guard seemed to read his thoughts and immediately said, His Highness Lucian pays us wages. A full salary every month. And if we ever decide we don't want this job anymore, we can quit any time and find other work. Hearing this, Sharon fell silent. The guard continued enthusiastically, and that's not all, we even have social security. As long as we pay a small insurance fee, we can save a lot on medical treatment in the future. His Highness Lucian is the greatest ruler in the world. And we don't have to worry about where to keep our savings. His Highness has even opened a special bank for us. We can deposit our money, have professionals manage it, withdraw it whenever we want, and it earns interest every year. Social security? A bank? Interest? Sharon was momentarily stunned. He didn't understand these terms at all. But what shocked him more was how deeply the commoners here trusted their lord. For an ordinary civilian, what matters most? Besides family, money. If this were in his own territory, unless he seized it by force, no commoner would ever hand their savings to him voluntarily. At that moment, Sharon clearly realized something. His relationship with the common people was completely different from Lucian's relationship with his subjects. In his own territory, the people felt only fear and forced respect. Here, the people held genuine respect, trust, and even affection for their lord, Lucian. A faint pang of envy surfaced in Sharon's heart. My lord, we should return to the inn, Kron whispered. Sharon nodded quietly. They went back to an inn in town. Once they settled in, Kron discreetly revealed their identities and informed the innkeeper that they would formally pay a visit the next morning. When Lucian heard about this, he was in the middle of having Kyurem supervise training for the other Pokémon. Lord Sharon of Twin Dragon Territory? Lucian glanced uncertainly at Elif. That's correct, Elif confirmed. Lord Sharon arrived today. He plans to pay you a formal visit tomorrow morning. Twin Dragon Territory, could this be the Twin Dragon City that would exist in later generations? Sharon, could he be the ancestor of Shaga? Lucian wasn't surprised. The moment the newspaper was published, he knew this day would arrive sooner or later. I understand, Lucian said with a nod. Since Sharon wanted to meet, then he would meet him. With Kyurem at his side, Lucian wasn't worried about his two brothers discovering his location. Reshiram, Zekrom, Kyurem, no matter the era or war, all three were equivalent to nuclear deterrence. Their presence alone was a warning. But this conflict had clearly been brewing for a long time. A single clash between kings would not resolve it. I'll make the proper arrangements so the visitor can meet you first thing tomorrow, Elif said. Then, as if he suddenly recalled something, he added, "By the way, Your Highness, the throne room in the castle has been completed. You can receive him there tomorrow morning." As a king, how could His Highness still use a small, cramped office to receive visiting lords? It would be far beneath his dignity, and other nobles might look down on him for it. Only a majestic castle was worthy of His Highness. The next morning, Sharon and Kron, under Relief's guidance, headed to meet His Highness Lucian. Crossing through the town and over a wide stone bridge, they finally saw it, a towering, grand castle rising above the plains. A hint of astonishment flashed across their eyes. This castle was far more imposing than the one in their own territory. Soon, they arrived at its gates. With a deep rumble, the massive doors slowly opened, revealing a spacious, resplendent hall. A thick red carpet stretched forward like a river of crimson, leading all the way to a lofty throne. A young man sat upon that throne, and behind him stood a colossal figure radiating an ancient, oppressive aura. Its presence alone was suffocating. Merely looking at it sent a chill down one's spine, as though its very existence embodied overwhelming dominance. Sharon and Kron instinctively trembled. Their eyes widened in horror as they stared at Kurum. That was that magical beast? Its aura was no weaker than the dragon Reshiram they had once seen beside Prince Lance. "Your Highness." At that moment, an impossible thought flashed through the minds of both master and servant. Could the person seated on that throne truly be the third Prince Lucian they had heard so much about? Sharon couldn't help but murmur, voice trembling. "Lucian. Your Highness?" The very second he spoke, the young man on the throne slowly lowered his gaze, his calm eyes falling directly upon Sharon. Chapter 165, Reshiram's Visit. The moment Sharon's gaze met the others, an inexplicable tension gripped him. Staring at the face that resembled Prince Lance, he became absolutely certain the person seated on the throne was none other than Prince Lucian, the third prince of the kingdom of Eindhoek. But why? Shouldn't Prince Lucian be in the royal capital right now? Why was he here, establishing a territory of his own? More importantly, as a member of the royal family, he actually intended to abolish slavery. Wasn't this openly defying the will of his ancestors? What shook Sharon even more was the sight behind Lucian. Just like Lando and Lance, Lucian had also subdued a dragon. Didn't that mean Prince Lucian intended to participate in the upcoming war as well? For a moment, Sharon's thoughts spiraled, horrified by each new realization. Eindhoek was about to change. Just then, the young man on the throne spoke. "Twin Dragon Territories, Lord?" Sharon's tension snapped. He subconsciously nodded. "Your Highness, that is indeed me." "What brings you here?" Lucian asked. "Because." Sharon originally wanted to accuse him of impersonating Prince Lucian, but at the last moment, he changed his words. "Because the newspapers and paper Your Highness created have already reached my Twin Dragon territory." Lucian nodded lightly. In that case, his two older brothers would soon receive the news as well. Although he already had Kurum, enough to stand against either one, in other areas he was still far inferior to his brothers. But his biggest problem was population. Progress was stalling. War was inevitable, but to him, that war was also a chance to drastically increase his population. He could take in refugees, shelter Pokémon who were forced into conscription, and send out his own Pokémon forces to disrupt the monster legions enslaved by human lords. Lucian's thoughts raced. As someone who had studied history in his past life, he knew a simple truth. He who wins the hearts of the people wins the world. When the war reached its peak, he could raise the banner of "for the people and the Pokémon" and step in to stop it. At that moment, public sentiment would surge overwhelmingly toward him, drowning out any nobles who opposed him. The new era would be ushered in naturally. When Lucian looked at the throne beneath him, he sighed inwardly. Even now, his own subjects were constantly pressuring him to ascend the throne. "You've already seen everything," Lucian said, looking down at Sharon. Sharon thought, "Yes. I've seen a newborn world." This territory, under Prince Lucian's rule, was thriving. Small for now, but its future was blindingly bright. But bright future was not the frightening part. The terrifying part was this. He had already chosen a side in the war, Prince Lance's side. And now, he had unexpectedly walked straight into the domain of Prince Lucien. Currently, Lucien's overall strength was far inferior to Lance's. Under such conditions, no one would want to be discovered. Thinking that he might not leave alive, Sharon silently regretted coming in person. But then, Lucien casually said, "Since you've finished looking, you may leave." Sharon froze. Your Highness? Is there anything else?" Lucien asked. "No, nothing." Sharon shook his head rapidly. Without hesitation, he bowed and left the castle with Kron, hurrying out of Lucien's territory. Outside the hall, Elif spoke anxiously. "Your Highness, are we truly letting him go? What if Prince Lance learns that you're here?" "No need to worry," Lucien replied calmly. "My presence can't remain hidden forever. As the territory grows, the news will reach my brothers sooner or later." Then, with a faint smile. "Besides, I also want to meet them." He wanted to see what kind of people were chosen by Reshiram and Zekrom in this era. Elif paused, then nodded. "Yes, Your Highness." Lucien thought Lance would receive the news much later, but he had not expected the other party to arrive so soon. Half a month later, just as Lucien was inspecting the soldiers' special training of Aaron and Swablu, a guard rushed in to report. "A man who calls himself Lance has come to see Your Highness." Lucien immediately went out. Ahead stood a young man with long white hair, pale skin, and a gentle, handsome face. Behind him towered a pure white dragon, its body covered in soft, feather-like fur, its wolf-like face serene and beautiful, its enormous wings raised gracefully. This was Reshiram, the legendary Pokémon capable of burning the world to ashes, the true dragon that aids those who pursue truth and reality. At this moment, Reshiram lowered its head, its bright blue eyes calmly observing Lucien. Just then, as if sensing something from this human, the white dragon seemed to hesitate ever so slightly. Not only Reshiram, Lucien also sensed a faint tremor from Kurum inside its pokeball. Kurum wanted to absorb Reshiram's truth flame, fill the hollow in its own body, and become white Kurum. But after a brief moment, the ancient dragon restrained itself. Its nature was upright, dignified, and loyal. Stealing power this way would disgrace its honor. Kurum wished to face Reshiram fairly, to fight alongside Lucien, defeat the truth-bearing human before them, and only then reclaim the lost power in an honorable battle. With this resolve, Kurum conveyed its intentions into Lucien's mind. Lucien nodded slightly. Meanwhile, Lance was quietly examining his third brother. After a long moment, a warm smile appeared on his gentle face, and he stepped forward. "Third brother, it's been a long time. You've grown so much. A few years ago, you were only this tall, always following me and our eldest brother around, pestering us with questions about the outside world." Lance gestured the height he remembered, his expression full of nostalgia. He looked exactly like an older brother simply visiting home. Lucien was taken aback by the familiar warmth, momentarily speechless. After a brief pause, he said quietly, "Come sit for a while. It's almost noon, share lunch with me?" He led Lance back to his mansion and asked a maid to prepare the meal. Lance looked around with curiosity, then his eyes widened as he noticed the magical beasts inside. Dragonite, Superior, Larvesta, Gullet, Victini, Minccino. When he saw Victini, even Lance's always gentle expression shifted in surprise. "Nini?" Victini blinked nervously at him. "Victini, long time no see," Lance said with a soft smile. "Nini." Victini tilted its head, uncertain, then timidly greeted back. Lance looked around the room again, amazed. Everything showed the traces of humans and Pokémon living together, sharing space, tasks, comfort. "I never imagined you, third brother, would build a home like this," he murmured. "Victini is a magical beast too," Lucien reminded him. "I grew up with it since childhood." Lance's gaze lingered on the little Minccino sweeping the floor with its fluffy tail. Just then, food arrived. Lucian gestured for Lance to sit. The two began eating quietly. Neither spoke. The silence was too familiar, too heavy. Once, long ago, they had eaten like this. Their father and mother were still alive. The three brothers would crowd around the table, arguing over the last chicken leg. Landon, being the eldest and strongest, always snatched it away, leaving his two younger brothers to fight over it. But he never ate it. He just liked teasing them. Lucian, back then, would sometimes cry out of frustration. Their father would scold Landon sternly, saying older brothers must let their younger siblings eat first. Their mother would smile softly, telling them not to fight, that they were brothers, and brothers should support each other. But now... Lance lowered his gaze, a faint sorrow crossing his expression. Remembering all this, he let out a silent sigh. After a long silence, Lance suddenly spoke. "I thought you were with our eldest brother." Back then, their father had sent Lucian to his fiefdom, a territory that was under Landon's control. Lance had always assumed Lucian was being held there, forced to remain under their eldest brother's shadow. Until a few days ago, when he received news from the Lord of Twin Dragon territory. "Something happened," Lucian explained calmly. "We encountered a blizzard on the road. The caravan lost its way. After that, I led the remaining people and rebuilt a home here." "You should have come to me," Lance sighed softly. "No matter what happens, I'm still your brother." Lucian said nothing. He was not the original owner of this body. Affection between brothers was a complicated thing. Even in his previous world, history showed that brotherhood meant little in a struggle for the throne. After a moment, Lucian asked, "How are things with Big Brother?" "I haven't seen him in a long time," Lance shook his head. "But I think we'll meet again soon. Isn't there any way to stop?" Lucian asked quietly. Lance's gentle expression dimmed. "Third brother, things have gone too far. Big Brother and I can't turn back anymore. Too many humans and too many magical beasts are depending on us. This is a clash of beliefs between him and me." He paused, then added with a small smile. "But don't worry, I won't imprison you like Big Brother did. I just hope you won't interfere. When everything is over, we can return to how we used to be. Wouldn't that be good?" Lucian didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Second brother, what do you think of magical beasts?" "Magical beasts?" Lance spoke without hesitation. "Humans have treated magical beasts far too cruelly. They have emotions and intelligence. Enslaving them like tools is an unforgivable cruelty. I want to liberate all enslaved magical beasts, return them to nature, and build a kingdom that belongs to humans alone." His voice was gentle, yet filled with conviction. This was his true belief. Lucian fell silent for a moment, then asked, "And what about human slaves?" "They are enslaved and oppressed as well, enslaved by other humans, by nobles." "That's different," Lance replied instinctively. And that instinct said everything. Born a prince, raised by nobles, taught from birth that royal blood was inherently superior, of course he couldn't see it. Lucian looked at his brother quietly. It wasn't Lance's personal fault. This was the burden of an ancient feudal world, the heavy mountain of class division that had oppressed humanity for generations. "I'm sorry, second brother," Lucian said softly. "But I don't agree with your reality. In my eyes, there is no difference between humans and magical beasts." Lance froze for a moment. Then let out a long, helpless sigh. "It seems, you found your own path, third brother." He knew Lucian well enough to see that persuasion was impossible now. "Big Brother has gathered nearly 200,000 soldiers," Lance continued, "including countless magical beast armies. His strength is overwhelming." He looked at Lucian seriously. "I hope we can avoid fighting for now. If I clash with you and weaken myself, Big Brother will seize the chance and mobilize his entire force." "I promise you." Lucian nodded. For now, it was true, getting involved too early would bring no benefit. After lunch, Lance stood up. He seemed to sense something in the air and murmured. In ancient times, a divine dragon split into three, each choosing its own destiny. Now, the three of us brothers are also fighting for our own beliefs. That's not quite right, Lucian thought silently. Kiram would not fight Zekrom and Reshiram. As the empty shell, Kiram was destined to devour the other two, to merge the Trinity into one whole, encompassing all things. Only then could the world return to balance. Lance looked at him with a quiet, resolute expression. Third brother, the next time we meet will probably be on the battlefield. He paused, then added softly. Whoever the final victor is, please carry on that belief for them. Lucian nodded. Yes, second brother. Lance did not linger. War was closing in on all sides, and the weight of an entire faction waited for him back at the castle. He walked outside, Reshiram lowering itself so he could mount. A clear, echoing dragon's cry pierced the sky. Then, Reshiram lifted into the air, its flawless white form rising higher and higher, nearly blending into the clouds. Civilians across Lucian's territory stopped what they were doing, gazing upward in awe. Soon, the dragon's silhouette vanished into the distant horizon, and Lucian's city returned to its everyday calm. But Lucian knew that this peace was nothing more than a thin shell, fragile, temporary, deceptive. A storm was gathering over Unova. And when it finally broke, nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 166, The Possibility of the Three Dragons of Unification Merging into One? In Lucian City, Lucian stood in the courtyard, gazing up at Reshiram's receding figure. Kiram stood behind him, silently watching alongside him. An ancient, terrifying pressure radiated from its massive form. Its golden eyes were completely emotionless, making its thoughts impossible to discern. Remembering what Kiram had telepathically conveyed moments earlier, Lucian asked. Kiram, do you intend to reclaim their power through a fair battle, to defeat Reshiram and Zekrom openly? As a transmigrator, Lucian knew that Kiram possessed a natural advantage over the other two dragons. Just like the Hoenn trio, where Rayquaza naturally countered both Groudon and Kyogre. If Reshiram and Zekrom were the Groudon and Kyogre of Unova, then Kiram was Unova's Rayquaza. With its power, Kiram could have devoured Reshiram the moment they met, instantly becoming White Kiram. Hearing Lucian's words, Kiram dipped its head slightly. Its voice rumbled like ancient ice cracking across a frozen continent. This is my wish. Lucian smiled. Yes, this fit Kiram perfectly. Cold exterior. A fierce sense of honor. A dragon that despised trickery and fought only in upright battle. I understand, Lucian said softly. Then we'll meet them honorably. Kiram nodded again, then spoke slowly. Humans have split into three factions because of their differing ideals, and each has chosen a human representative. This war is not merely between humans. It is also a battle between our ideals. If I devour them by force now, Reshiram and Zekrom's ideals will persist. They will resist me bitterly. Even if I reclaim their power, the three of us will eventually split apart once more. Only if I defeat them in a clash of ideals will their power willingly merge with mine. Lucian's mind flickered. So that's why you remained in the Giant's Chasm instead of devouring them earlier? Kiram nodded, acknowledging it. Compared to Hoenn's raw struggle for natural energy, Unova's conflict was far more ideological. Reality versus ideal. Human supremacy versus Pokémon liberation. Kiram, the vessel of conflict, was the only one who could hold both sides. The eldest prince's ideal, a human-dominated world, built by enslaving Pokémon. The second prince's ideal, a Pokémon-dominated world, freeing Pokémon, but suppressing humans. Both extremes were flawed. Why couldn't humans and Pokémon coexist? Live together? Grow together? Lucian sighed quietly. Then Kiram spoke again. Only through balance can our true form return to the world. Its timeless voice reverberated in Lucian's mind. Kiram looked straight into Lucian's eyes. After this time together, Kiram had accepted him completely. Lucian was finally qualified to hear this truth. Lucian's pupils tightened sharply. He froze. After a long silence, he asked in disbelief. "You mean the three of you can merge again?" Kiram nodded, majestic and solemn. "That is our true power. The true power of the Unova Three Dragons. Could it be the strongest dragon spoken of only in legends, the original dragon of the way? Judging from Kiram's words, it might really be possible to regain that form." No, on closer thought, it was indeed possible. Kiram was a vessel capable of holding all things. Whether Reshiram or Zekrom, it could encompass them both. And Kiram's ideal was the great fusion of humans and Pokémon, a future where both coexist, live together, and develop side by side. A philosophy that included both the eldest prince's ideal and the second prince's truth, without contradicting either. More importantly, this was the correct developmental path for humans and Pokémon, and the future personally acknowledged by Arceus, the creator god. Lucian felt a surge of excitement. If Kiram could reclaim its complete power and unite the three into one, perhaps no one in the world could rival them. But Lucian quickly calmed down. According to Kiram, this war was not merely a struggle between the three princes, it was a clash of ideals among the soldiers, civilians, and Pokémon who followed them. To pass their ideals to the opposing side, they had to defeat them utterly, from beginning to end. Thinking this, Lucian's determination grew stronger. However, until that day arrived, they still needed to grow steadily. Year 149 of the Kingdom Calendar. Autumn arrived quietly upon this land. For Lucian City, thanks to the combined efforts of its people and their Pokémon, this year's harvest was abundant. Outside Lucian City, wheat fields stretched endlessly in golden waves. Heavy ears bowed under their own weight, each grain full and ripe, almost none empty. In the orchards, sweet, fragrant pomelos hung thick on the branches. With joyful smiles, farmers moved through the fields with sickles, harvesting the bounty. Part of the ripe produce would be kept as seed. The rest was sent to the mills to be ground into flour or rice, then delivered to bakeries to be made into bread and desserts available throughout the territory. The entire city was wrapped in the happiness of a bountiful harvest. During the past 2 months, thanks to papermaking and various magical crop products, Lucian City's commerce had flourished. As Lord, Lucian had accumulated considerable wealth. He used part of that wealth to expand his army, part to improve the city, and part to build a castle. After nearly a year, with countless workers and the Pokémon laboring tirelessly, a grand castle rose from the earth. It was enormous, with every facility a ruler could need: a throne hall, reception hall, banquet hall, kitchens and wine cellars, food storage warehouses, soldiers' barracks, living quarters, maids' rest chambers. The castle had 5 levels. Lucian's bedroom was on the topmost floor, a spacious chamber with a thick carpet woven from merip wool, bearing the royal emblem. A terrace extended from the bedroom, overlooking all of Lucian City. From there, Lucian could see everything: the city within the walls, the farmland beyond, a sweeping, unobstructed view of his growing domain. Chapter 167, The Castle. This was Lucian's first day living in the castle. At first, he wasn't quite used to it. But when he saw his Pokémon racing happily around the spacious interior, Lucian adapted quickly. The space was huge, even Kiram could stretch out comfortably. The maids had thoughtfully used merip wool and cloth to sew many special Pokémon nests sized for Dragonite, Superior, Minccino, Golett, and even one extremely large nest for Kiram. Whenever they were tired, they could curl up inside and rest. However, Dragonite and Minccino clearly preferred squeezing into Lucian's own bed rather than sleeping in their personal nests. From today onward, this is our new home. Lucian grinned, speaking to his Pokémon. Minnie. The Minccino squad, however, stared at the enormous castle in despair. This house is way too big. Cleaning this is going to kill us. Their 5 tiny faces were filled with trauma. Lucian chuckled, immediately understanding. Relax, the castle has its own dedicated cleaning staff. If you really want to help, just take care of this room. Hearing this, The 5 Minccino perked up instantly. Me. Lucien stepped onto the terrace and looked at the crowd below. Today was the official opening of the castle. His cooks, maids, and knights had already moved in. The entire castle had become fully operational. Bright sky, clear water, Lucien was in excellent spirits. From today onward, they finally had a real home. But something else mattered more to him. He brought a few Pokémon downstairs to the castle's rear garden. There lay a vast ecological park, meadows, flower beds, tall trees, even an artificial lake. Everything a Pokémon might need to live comfortably. This was designed exactly according to Lucien's wishes, a place to raise the Pokémon he loved, a place where his Dragonite and Superior could rest and play anytime. Lucien felt genuinely satisfied. Just then, footsteps approached behind him. "Your Highness Lucien, so you were here," Elif said with a smile. "The castle is so big, it wasn't easy to find you." Lucien turned around. Elif continued, "Your Highness, please come. Everyone is waiting for you in the throne room." Lucien nodded. "I know." He let his Pokémon run around the garden while he and Elif walked to the throne room. Geralt, Ryan, Elif, Anna, the tax collector, and several others were already assembled, standing in 2 orderly rows, waiting for their lord. When Lucien entered, everyone turned toward him. "Your Highness." Lucien nodded slightly, walking toward the leader's seat. "Let's begin." "Report your current matters," Lucien said. Elif stepped forward first. "The crops across the territory have been harvested. This year is a bountiful one. Seeds have been saved, grain stored as you instructed. I believe we won't face the fear of scarcity this winter." Lucien nodded. "Good. Winter will arrive after autumn. Make sure everyone is prepared. And don't forget, we must also help the magical beasts in the territory stock up and get ready, so we can all get through winter together." "Yes, Your Highness," Elif said. Lucien turned to Anna. "Anna, is the school's teaching progressing smoothly?" Anna laughed softly. "Yes. I've already taught all the basic trainer knowledge to the students." "Excellent." Lucien exhaled softly. "I've had those lessons compiled into proper textbooks. You can collect them from the Royal Workshop and distribute them to the new trainers." "Yes, Your Highness," Anna nodded, then suddenly remembered something. "By the way, there still isn't a dedicated area for magical beats battles at the school. Those kids battle anywhere they feel like it, and the school grounds are constantly getting destroyed. Right now, while they were novice trainers, the damage wasn't too severe. But once they grew stronger, the destruction would escalate rapidly." Lucien frowned slightly. This indeed was a problem. Then, combining ideas from modern gyms and league arenas, inspiration struck. "In that case," Lucien said calmly, "let's build a specialized magical beasts battle arena in the territory. A Colosseum-style structure, trainers could battle freely, spar formally, and even host public matches. They could charge entrance fees for spectators, too. It would generate income, provide entertainment for the citizens, and gradually spread the culture of trainer battles, all while paving the way for the future." "The arena?" Anna paused for a moment, slightly taken aback. "Yes. Elif, you will handle the arrangements for this," Lucien said. "Yes, Your Highness." Elif nodded. Next, it was the Royal Workshop's turn. A craftsman responsible for printing books stepped forward. "Your Highness, as you instructed, we have begun re-editing several ancient books and collections using movable type printing. Once the library is completed, these books can be placed inside." "Good. You have worked hard," Lucien said with a satisfied nod. The library was one of Lucien's most important strategies for attracting scholars from other regions. He had already published the announcement in the newspapers, and he believed that it wouldn't be long before scholars from across the kingdom would hear about Raven City. Once those scholars personally witnessed a public library filled with newly printed books, they would likely choose to stay in this rising city of knowledge. Lucien then turned his attention to Geralt. Geralt, how is the training of the knights progressing? Geralt stepped forward, performing a respectful knight's salute before reporting. Your Highness, thanks to the training methods you provided, the special training of our soldiers is progressing very smoothly. To date, some of the army's Aaron have evolved into Lyron. A number of Swablu have evolved into Altaria and have already mastered the move Draco Meteor. So fast? Lucian was genuinely surprised. The results of the unified, intensive training were better than he had expected. But after thinking it through, this speed made sense. The training methods provided by Lucian's system were extremely scientific and comprehensive. The soldiers trained day and night in addition to patrolling. Their partnered Pokémon trained alongside them with equal dedication. With both partners and Pokémon pushing each other forward every day, evolving was the natural result. Chapter 168, Thanksgiving. Indeed. Swablu has already evolved to its final stage, but it still needs more training. I want them to master Parish Song, Lucian said thoughtfully. Parish Song was a very special move. A Pokémon sings a melody infused with the power of death. Any Pokémon that hears it will fall into a critical state after a set period of time. If used on a battlefield, it could drastically weaken an enemy Pokémon army. Yes, Your Highness, Geralt replied, committing Lucian's instructions to memory. Lucian continued, an Aaron path does not end at Lyron. Above Lyron, there exists a form called Agron. Altaria could theoretically reach a megaform, but that was temporary and required a megastone, something that, in this era, likely didn't exist. King Az of Kalos had not yet activated the ultimate weapon, so the energy that shaped megastones was absent from the world. We will maintain the current pace of training, Geralt said. As commander of the knights, that responsibility rested with him. Lucian nodded, then addressed everyone gathered in the hall. That concludes today's reports. Keep up your efforts. Yes, Your Highness. Everyone withdrew in an orderly fashion. Lucian sat on his throne, lost in thought about the future. Even though the territory was thriving, it was still far from meeting the requirements for entering the industrial age. 100,000 satisfaction points, at least 50,000 subjects, and public morale above 90. Only the last requirement had been achieved. The most urgent task is population growth, Lucian concluded. Several strategies surfaced in his mind. The people could marry and have children, but children took many years to grow. He could continue using newspapers and commerce to attract merchants, civilians, and scholars from other territories. He could accept refugees displaced by war and incorporate them as new citizens. But to reach 50,000 people, it would take several years. Then Lucian remembered something important. Pokémon also counted as his subjects. That meant increasing the number of Pokémon within the territory could directly boost his population total. The question was, which Pokémon were small, peaceful, easy to raise, and useful to humans? A long list came to mind. Flababy, Floette, Lilligant, Skitty, Sylveon, Teddiursa, Piku, Eevee, Vulpix. Flababy and Floette could tend flower fields. Lilligant could grow herbs and help cultivate farmland. Skitty could accompany the elderly and keep them emotionally healthy. Each of them had practical value. I should try this, Lucian thought. But population growth also required infrastructure. More houses. Better food distribution. Public facilities and services. And, something Lucian City lacked almost entirely, entertainment. The territory has grown to the point where entertainment is nearly non-existent. It's time to give everyone places to relax and enjoy themselves. In ancient Rome, nobles built the Colosseum to satisfy their entertainment needs and to display the empire's military might. Slaves fought wild beasts for the amusement of nobles and knights. Lucian recalled the structure of the Roman Colosseum in his mind. Perhaps he could redesign it into a trainer's arena suited to the culture and customs of the Pokémon world. With this idea, Lucian summoned Elena, the castle's designer, and explained his concept. An arena where trainers command magical beasts to battle while spectators watch for entertainment, Elena murmured thoughtfully. Lucian nodded. Exactly. What I envision is an open-air arena like this. He placed a rough sketch, his adaptation of the Colosseum's outline, in front of her. Some magical beast's moves could damage a roof, so I chose an open-air format. The central area below is the battlefield. The surrounding circular stands are for spectators, Lucian explained. Elena's eyes immediately lit up as she studied the grand design. This is incredible. Your Highness, your imagination truly knows no bounds. Lucian paused, helpless. So, is it feasible? Of course. Elena replied quickly. Trainer battles will become wildly popular. People will flock here to watch. In fact, Elena had a feeling that if this building were completed, it would become a landmark remembered for generations. Good, Lucian said. When matches are held, people from other territories will visit Lucian City. They'll stay in inns, buy local goods, it'll boost the entire economy. In that case, he concluded, you'll oversee construction. Elif and the workers will support you completely. Rest assured, Your Highness. I, Elena, won't disappoint you. She already had ideas forming: mortar foundations, tiered concrete seating, structural reinforcements. Oh, one more thing, Lucian said suddenly. What is it, Your Highness? Elena asked. The arena doesn't need to be too large, Lucian said. A huge structure would take too long and consume too many materials. It would drain manpower and slow the territory's growth. If he remembered correctly, the largest Roman Colosseum could hold more than 90,000 people. Lucian City's version didn't need anything close to that scale yet. Make it big enough for 10,000 spectators. When our population grows, and the treasury is overflowing, then we'll expand. Elena thought for a moment, then nodded. Understood, Your Highness. She accepted the assignment and left to begin preparations. Lucian returned to his room on the top floor of the castle. He intended to continue working through official documents, but suddenly, a wave of noise rose from downstairs. Nini, the Pokémon, looked toward the sound, confused. Lucian was equally puzzled. He walked onto the terrace of his room, and the moment he saw the scene below, he froze. A sea of humans and Pokémon filled the courtyard, bustling with excitement. Your Highness Lucian! The moment Lucian appeared, everyone in the territory erupted with joy. Today was not only important to Lucian. It was important to all of them. Their prince, the one who had led them from confusion and hardship into prosperity on this unfamiliar land, finally had a magnificent castle of his own, just like any true king. They cheered out of genuine happiness, because in their hearts, their Prince Lucian deserved nothing less. And it was not only humans. Many Pokémon who had once suffered under human enslavement in the royal city were cheering as well. Machamp, Conkeldurr, Machoke and others stood among the crowd, waving vigorously. Their faces were full of bright smiles that bore no trace of the fear or timidity they once carried. Sister, this is wonderful. Lena tugged at her older sister Selena's sleeve, her voice trembling with joy. Selena nodded softly. Since arriving in this territory, they had never once experienced the discrimination they once knew. No one treated them as ominous symbols. No one feared or rejected them. On the contrary, people thanked them deeply whenever they healed the injured. All of this was because of Prince Lucian. He offered them a home. He gave them safety. He provided them with work. Compared to the eldest and second princes, and even the old king, Selena felt that Prince Lucian was the only ruler who truly understood compassion. If only Prince Lucian could become the next king of the kingdom, she thought. Then, both humans and Pokémon suffering across this land could finally be freed. The people celebrated loudly. Suddenly, Lucian received a system notification. Popularity +5. Current popularity, 100, maximum reached. Tip: when popularity is full, all citizens of the territory work with unified hearts. Their work efficiency increases greatly. Lucian was momentarily surprised, then quickly understood. His people had gathered spontaneously, celebrating the completion of the castle. As their lord, he needed to say something. He raised his hand slightly. Immediately, the lively crowd quieted. His gaze swept over the familiar yet diverse faces, both human and Pokémon. Lucian announced in a clear, resonant voice. "Thank you all for your hard work. Today is a meaningful day for every one of us. The completion of this castle means that Lucian City is now truly established, and before long, the name Lucian City will spread across the world. Here there is no oppression. Here there is no enslavement. In this place, humans and magical beasts can live happily together." Below, smiles blossomed across the faces of the humans. The Pokémon also smiled warmly and nodded, agreeing wholeheartedly. Lucian continued. "From today onward, let us continue to work together to build our Lucian City, to build our shared home. I declare that humans and magical beasts will stand united from this day forward." Night fell. The sky glittered with countless stars, and gentle moonlight washed over the land. Thanks to the light from Ampharos, even in the deepest night, Lucian City remained brightly illuminated. Because of Lucian's declaration earlier that day, the people of Lucian City gathered together and, after some discussion, decided to mark today as Thanksgiving. It would be a day to express gratitude to Prince Lucian and to celebrate the friendship between humans and Pokémon. Every street and plaza in the city was filled with people sharing a feast and celebrating the holiday. Lucian stood on the terrace of his castle, looking down at the brilliantly lit city below. Kiram stood quietly beside him. Dragonite and the Minccino had already run off into the streets, eager to play with the other Pokémon. "I sense it," Kiram's voice echoed suddenly in Lucian's mind. Lucian turned. "What is it?" "A very mysterious power." Kiram looked down at the joyful humans and Pokémon below. "This power is the bond between you and them. It flows from their hearts and gathers around you." Lucian was taken aback. "What kind of power?" "The power of faith," Kiram replied. "The trust and affection these humans and Pokémon have toward you. Their belief in you strengthens constantly, and that power gathers here. It nourishes my physical form, just as human faith strengthens Zekrom and Reshiram. The stronger their faith, the stronger those two dragons can become. I can also absorb this power as nourishment to restore my body and gain strength." Lucian stood frozen for a moment. The power of faith exists in this world too? He thought carefully, and the answer clicked immediately. Of course it does. Emotions themselves are a source of power in the Pokémon world. Will this power help you? Lucian asked. Very much, Kiram answered. In that case, take it. Use all of it, Lucian said with a smile. Kiram was momentarily stunned. Lucian continued, sincere and warm. Kiram, thank you for leaving your seclusion to help me. If we speak honestly, in terms of strength alone, Dragonite and I would never have qualified to earn your recognition, yet you still allowed us to pass your trial. Lucian looked directly at Kiram. I have admired you since long before we met. Even though you act cold, you have a heart that is strong and kind. I have always believed that. Kiram was silent. Its expression did not change. Its aura remained icy and ancient. Kiram stared at Lucian for a long moment. Without a word, it turned its massive body and walked away from the terrace. Its heavy footsteps echoed softly as it returned to its room. Only a faint telepathic message lingered in Lucian's mind. It is late. I will rest now. Chapter 169, The Scholar. The morale of the people within a territory is something mysterious and difficult to grasp. The day after the castle was completed, Lucian opened the territory information panel. Lord's name, Lucian. Territory, Lucian City, Town. Population, humans 1426, click to view details. Population, Pokémon 428, click to view details. Morale, 100, United. Satisfaction, 25,680. Technologies: animal husbandry, fishing, pottery, clay figurines, papermaking. After yesterday's celebrations and the completion of the castle, morale had risen to its maximum value of 100. Lucien immediately noticed that, at this level of morale, his people displayed extraordinary enthusiasm and passion in everything they did. At home or at work, the difference was obvious. Workers, farmers, and ranchers all operated with a level of efficiency he had never seen before. Even the Pokémon worked with renewed vigor. Under the leadership of Elena and Elif, the workers began construction of the grand arena with tremendous enthusiasm. The completion of the castle also boosted the satisfaction level within the territory by 10,000 points overnight, bringing it to 25,000. This already accounted for 1/4 of the requirement needed to advance toward the industrial age. Unfortunately, Lucien soon realized that morale was not something that would remain at 100 for long. After observing the territory for some time, he discovered that once the excitement faded and daily life settled into routine, morale gradually declined and stabilized around 90. Although 90 was still an exceptionally high value, Lucien felt it was difficult to return to anything lower after experiencing the benefits of maximum morale. He began analyzing the data of his residents to understand the cause. The answer became clear immediately. The people of the territory now had new desires. Once basic needs such as food and clothing were met, they naturally sought spiritual fulfillment. Books, newspapers, and Pokémon battles all provided entertainment and relief from boredom. Lucien realized that as he developed his territory, he also needed to consider the spiritual needs of his people. He looked over the technology panel again. In addition to the standard city building technologies, several entertainment-related technologies also existed. For example, Bard, required to unlock the Opera House. Once unlocked, some residents may be inspired to create and perform songs based on life in the territory. There were also technologies such as sports match, tavern, and public bathhouse. Sports match function like modern athletics, allowing the formation of teams that could compete against each other while spectators watched. The tavern, much like those in medieval fantasy stories, would serve as a place where people could drink, talk, and relax after a long day. Unlocking it would also provide simple brewing recipes. The large public bathhouse would serve as a place for people to bathe and socialize. Staff would be present, and drinks and snacks would be available. Lucien studied each technology carefully. Since the population requirement for progressing toward the industrial age was still far away, it would be better to focus on expanding entertainment options in the meantime. These facilities would satisfy the spiritual needs of his residents and attract travelers from other territories. More importantly, these technologies did not require satisfaction points to unlock. Facilities such as taverns and bathhouses could simply be built directly. The territory's farmers were already brewing barley beer, which could easily be supplied to taverns. A bathhouse could also be run with ease. Water-type Pokémon could help supply water, and fire-type Pokémon could heat it. With Pokémon assisting, none of this would pose a difficulty. Lucien determined that the next step would be to continue expanding the town. Thinking this, Lucien summoned Elif and asked, "How is the construction of the Great Library progressing?" Elif replied, "Your Highness, after 2 months of work, the library you ordered is essentially complete. The craftsmen have used movable type printing, as instructed, to produce a large number of books for the library. The books were neatly arranged on wooden shelves. The carpenters had also crafted many tables and chairs so that people could sit and read comfortably. In 3 more days, the library will officially open to the public," Elif reported. "Very good," Lucien nodded in satisfaction. "Has the news about the library's opening been published in the newspapers?" "It has, Your Highness. Traveling merchants are expected to carry these newspapers to the surrounding territories within the next few days," Elif replied. Meanwhile, in Castelia City. As the largest city in the southern region of Unova, its population had reached nearly 100,000. It was the start of a new day. Scholar Derek rose early, as he always did. After getting dressed, the first thing he did was not eat or wash up, but go to the door to retrieve the newspaper he had subscribed to. Newspaper in hand, Derek went to the dining table, eating his bread while reading. The newspaper had arrived in Castelia City a month ago, supposedly delivered from a place called Lucian City. At first, Derek had been amazed by the clean white paper, but soon he became absorbed by its contents. It contained many fascinating articles. There was basic academic knowledge, but what interested Derek most were the insights and explanations about Pokémon. As a scholar who graduated from Eindhoven University, Derek was different from most academics. From his university days onward, he had been fascinated by Pokémon. They possessed extraordinary power, capable of producing fire, water, electricity, and much more. However, after reading these newspapers, Derek suddenly realized that his understanding of Pokémon had been far too shallow. Different Pokémon possessed different elemental types, and those types determined their strengths, weaknesses, and how they could assist humans in both daily life and agriculture. For example, today's newspaper introduced a Pokémon called Combi. Combi, a young hive magical beast, possessing the bug and flying types. 3 small bees form a single body and diligently gather nectar under the command of their Vespiquen. The honey they produce is far superior to ordinary honey. It is considered the king of honeys, rich in nutrients and perfect for making desserts. Combi? Derek recalled that merchants in Castelia City had recently been selling unusually sweet treats. He had never imagined that Combi could be domestically raised. Combi were not rare. Derek had studied them during his university years. He knew they normally responded only to their Vespiquen's commands. Yet the people of Lucian City had managed to raise them successfully. His curiosity about this Lucian City grew stronger. Derek continued reading and reached the next announcement. Warmly celebrating the opening of the Grand Library. Beginning today, the Lucian City Grand Library will officially open to the public. Thousands of books are available, and both nobles and commoners are welcome to read freely. The academic atmosphere is strong, and anyone may borrow books after registering, as long as they return them within the agreed period. All books have been reprinted on new paper, promising an entirely new reading experience. What? Derek's eyes widened in excitement. A grand library? Open to the public? His heartbeat quickened. As a scholar, nothing was more irresistible. If what the newspaper said was true, then this was the kind of place he had dreamed of all his life. A city where humans and Pokémon live together. A city with a thriving academic atmosphere. A city with a grand library open to everyone. At that moment, Derek felt an overwhelming desire to go there immediately. He made up his mind, he would leave today. After breakfast, Derek swiftly packed, said goodbye to his family and fiancée, paid for a spot in a merchant caravan, and left city, heading straight toward Lucian City. After several days of difficult travel, the caravan finally arrived. Gazing at the lively city in the distance, Derek's eyes shimmered with longing and excitement. He had arrived. He had finally arrived. Upon entering the city, Derek parted ways with the caravan. The moment he stepped inside, he froze in amazement. The humans here truly did live alongside Pokémon, just as the newspapers had described. Girls sat sunbathing with Petalo resting beside them inside shops. Makhop and Makhok helped carry goods. At street corners, Hop-Pip floated while holding signboards to guide pedestrians. Wow! Derek stood speechless. The Pokémon weren't harming humans. They weren't chained, threatened, or mistreated. They were simply coexisting. It felt like stepping into a dream. As someone who had always adored Pokémon, Derek couldn't help thinking, can humans and magical beasts truly live together like this? Filled with curiosity, he wandered through the streets, watching humans and Pokémon interact harmoniously. His first priority was to find an inn. After asking a helpful resident, he quickly located one, checked in, dropped off his luggage, and immediately rushed out to see the grand library mentioned in the newspaper. He asked for directions again, and thanks to the enthusiastic guidance of the locals, he soon arrived. Before him stood a tall, majestic building shaped like an enormous upright book. A wide staircase made of smooth concrete led up to its entrance. Derek climbed the steps and stopped at the doorway. The scent of ink and freshly printed paper drifted out. Inside, a wooden counter stood opposite the entrance. Behind it was a young receptionist, and beside her stood a tall Pokémon with long ears and a humanoid shape. Derek recognized it instantly. He had seen it in the newspaper illustrations. It was Lopunny. The moment Derek stepped inside, the girl and the Lopunny both smiled and nodded politely. "Excuse me, is this the Great Library?" Derek asked. "That's right," the girl replied softly. "This is the library His Highness Lucian built for everyone. At present it holds over 1,000 books, all reprinted on clean white paper. And His Highness plans to collect books from every nearby town and store them here as well." Following her gesture, Derek looked deeper into the building. The instant he saw the interior clearly, his eyes widened and he stood frozen in disbelief. 5 full floors. Each level packed from wall to wall with wooden bookshelves. Books everywhere, an ocean of knowledge. It was a place scholars dreamed of. Can I read here?" Derek asked, almost trembling. "Of course," the girl said warmly. "If you register with me and Lopunny, you can even borrow books and take them home." "Really?" Derek was stunned. "Aren't you afraid someone won't return them?" "We verify the borrower's identity," she explained. "We also collect a deposit equal to the price of the book. When you return it, the deposit is given back. And if you're already a resident of Lucian City, we only need your home address and basic information." Hearing this, Derek nodded in admiration. "That's an excellent system." The girl smiled. "Feel free to ask if you need anything. I'll be right here." Derek immediately moved toward the bookshelves. He began reading hungrily, page after page, and was astonished to discover several rare and precious academic texts among the collection. On the spot, Derek made a decision. He would settle here. And after stabilizing, he would bring his parents and fiancée to live here too. Inside the castle, Elif spoke with concern. "Your Highness Lucian, are you sure it's all right to put the books His Majesty gifted you in the public library?" "Don't worry," Lucian replied. "Those on display are only reprinted copies. I still have the originals. And honestly, those books can play a far greater role when placed in the library." Since the library opened, Lucian City had welcomed countless travelers from other towns, many of them scholars and educated individuals. Several had already spent their savings to buy houses and settle permanently, even bringing their families. As Lucian looked over the reports, a new thought came to him. Should he return to Eindhoven and reclaim all the books from the Royal Library as well? Chapter 170: War breaks out. The population expansion plan in Lucian City progressed remarkably smoothly. In just 2 months, the city's population nearly doubled, reaching 3,000. Once the Pokémon living within the city were included, the total population even reached 5,000. Most of the newcomers were scholars who had migrated from other cities after hearing about the opening of the Grand Library. They brought their families, parents, siblings, fiancés, and after a period of adjustment, they fully integrated into life in Lucian City. Under Lucian's personal invitation, many of these scholars became teachers in the city's schools. Lucian even took time to return to Eindhoven and nearly emptied the Royal Library's entire collection, transporting the books back to his territory, reprinting them, and placing them inside the Grand Library. For a time, Lucian City earned the title City of Knowledge. 2 months was enough to change many things. To accommodate the surging population, the city underwent major expansion, more residential zones, wider commercial districts, and, in the past 2 months, the taverns, public bathhouses, and other entertainment facilities Lucian had planned were now mostly complete. Workers who labored all day could relax in the public baths, eat a hot meal, then head to the taverns to drink barley beer and chat. All of this caused Lucian's satisfaction value to skyrocket. Lucian City now presented a picture of prosperity everywhere. Looking at the satisfaction meter rising past 50,000, Lucian nodded in approval. Just as expected, more entertainment and leisure made the people happier. And happier people generated more satisfaction. Only halfway to the 100,000 goal. Unfortunately, population growth is still too slow, Lucian muttered. But realistically, this era was still primitive. Ordinary civilians rarely traveled long distances. Without trains, planes, or ships, migration was extremely difficult. However, this was a Pokémon world. Some Pokémon could replace modern transportation. For example, in Galar, Corviknight acted as flying taxis. After special training, they carried passenger carriages suspended beneath their claws. Unova didn't have Corviknight, but Braviary could serve as a substitute. But the various Unova territories were currently independent and barely communicated, and with war looming, establishing flying taxi stations across the region was currently impossible. Lucian sighed and decided that the flying taxi company idea would have to wait. Rubbing his temples from long hours of work, he stepped away from his desk and walked onto the terrace, gazing over the town below. It was mid-October of year 149. The air had grown cold, and yellow leaves drifted down from the trees. Nini? Victini floated up beside him, looking down at the scenery with him. Lucian exhaled deeply. We left the royal city around this time last year. I can't believe a year has already passed. Victini blinked in surprise. Lucian really had changed, so much more mature than before. Behind them, Dragonite, Larvesta, Superior, Gallet and the Minccino also stepped out to join him, all gazing out at Lucian City. All right, that's enough rest for today. Time for special training, Lucian said. Even with Kyurem now providing overwhelming protection, their training could not be neglected. And training was far easier than before. With Kyurem as a sparring partner, Superior, Dragonite, and Larvesta all improved at astonishing speed. At this pace, Larvesta should evolve into Volcarona next year, Lucian thought. As for Gallet, it still wasn't fully accustomed to living with humans. Its movements were slow, intelligence delayed, clumsy, and stiff. Probably because its ghost-type energy was insufficient. Lucian didn't push it. He planned to seek out some ghost-type Pokémon later to replenish Gallet's spectral energy. If only I could find Arceus's ghost plate, Lucian murmured. Speaking of which, at this point in history, had Arceus already collided with the meteorite? In the movie Arceus and the Jewel of Life, Minccino was nearly destroyed by a meteorite. Arceus shattered it, exhausted himself, and collapsed. The Jewel of Life, his life source, scattered to the corners of the world and was later found by a man named Damos. To repay Damos, Arceus had once used 5 elemental plates, ground, water, grass, electric, and dragon, to forge the Jewel of Life and lend it to him. If that event hadn't happened yet, Lucian wondered whether he could involve himself, make contact with Arceus, and perhaps borrow the spooky plate. When the time comes, I should visit Minccino in the Sinnoh region, Lucian thought. Just then, Elif's anxious voice sounded from outside the door. Your Highness Lucian, urgent news. Come in. Lucian turned as Elif hurried inside, his expression unusually grim. What happened? Did something occur in the territory? Lucian asked. But Elif's next sentence made him freeze. Your Highness, the war has begun. We received reports this morning that 3 days ago, Prince Lando's army and Prince Lance's army officially clashed on the river plain in Northern Territory. Northern Castelia Territory, River Plain. A lone Pidove flew southward in search of warmer lands for the winter. Passing over the plains, it looked down and saw 2 enormous armies facing each other across the open field. A cold, suffocating tension blanketed the plains. Startled, the Pidove flapped its wings and fled. High in the air, Prince Landon sat astride Zekrom, crackling with electricity. Below him, a disciplined army of 100,000 soldiers stood ready. Their standard-bearer held a massive, pitch-black war banner. Opposite them, Prince Lance rode Reshiram, glowing with pure white fire. Another enormous army stood behind him, their banners the same white as Reshiram's wings. Lance's usually gentle face held a rare sorrow. I never hoped this day would come. But now there is no turning back. We carry too many hopes on our shoulders. Landon, let us fight for our ideals.
Lando said nothing.
His gaze was sharp and cold.
He lifted one arm. A single command. Zekrom roared.
The Black Army surged forward.
For our truth. Advance. Lance raised his arm. Fight.
Fight for our ideal future.
Reshiram responded with a deep, resonant cry, its white wings spreading wide.
The two armies collided.
Steel met steel. Humans fought humans. Pokémon fought Pokémon.
Blood splashed across the trampled earth.
Bodies fell one after another.
Those Pokémon who had joined Lance by free will fought ferociously even as they fell, showing no regret. They were fighting for the ideals they believed in.
Lance watched, voice soft but unshaken.
War is cruel. But for the world we desire, for the people and magical beast who entrusted their future to us, we must keep going.
Your sacrifices will not be meaningless.
Reshiram felt its trainer's conviction and let out a piercing roar. Its body shone brilliantly and it unleashed a rush of blue-white flame across the battlefield.
Landon's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand again.
Zekrom's body surged with violent electric power, arcs of blue lightning dancing across its scales.
With another mighty roar, Zekrom hurled itself straight into Reshiram's flames.
Lucian stood on the terrace, quietly listening to Elif's report.
Prince Lando launched a surprise attack on Prince Lance from behind with a large legion of magical beasts.
Prince Lance's army was caught in a pincer attack, suffered devastating losses, and was completely routed.
Prince Lance broke through the encirclement with Reshiram's power and retreated with the remaining army to the rear city. Elif looked at Lucian anxiously. Your Highness, what should we do? Lucian shook his head. Now is not the time for us to enter the war. He sighed softly. Begin winter preparations.
Also issue an order that from today onward, Lucian City will officially provide aid to all refugees displaced by the war.
And have Christina open a column in the newspaper.
Lucian City will take in all civilians who lost their homes and all soldiers who do not wish to fight.
Elif was surprised but nodded. Yes, Your Highness. This winter will be very cold, Lucian said quietly. Elif hurried off to carry out the orders. Lucian stayed on the terrace, deep in thought. A moment later, Elif suddenly returned, breathless. Prince Lucian, the three swords of justice have returned. It was Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. Before long, the three legendary Pokémon arrived at the castle.
Behind them were dozens of exhausted Pokémon covered in dust.
Oshawott, Adino, Gothita, Reuniclus, Amoonguss, Electabuzz, all looked worn and frightened.
The war has begun, Cobalion said calmly. These Pokémon lost their homes in the fighting, Virizion said gently. They had nowhere to go, so we brought them here. Terrakion's cheerful nature was nowhere to be seen.
Even he looked heavy-hearted. Lucian, we ask you to help them. I understand. Lucian's heart softened at the sight of the frightened Pokémon. Elif, prepare food and water for them. Yes, Your Highness. The maids soon brought bread, berries, sap, and simple desserts.
The starving Pokémon rushed to eat, trembling with hunger.
The sight made the humans watching ache inside. Eat slowly.
There is plenty for everyone, a maid said gently.
Lucian glanced at the swords of justice. You should all rest too. After they eat, Elif will arrange rooms for them.
The three legendary Pokémon nodded. They trusted Lucian deeply. After traveling non-stop to protect these refugees, they were exhausted and fell asleep quickly. Meanwhile, the rescued Pokémon followed Elif and Victini up the castle's wide spiral staircase. Elif intended to take them to a quiet room where they could rest. As they passed a window, Oshawott suddenly froze.
Water, it cried in excitement.
Elif turned to look and realized what had caught its attention. Below was the expansive garden Lucian had built in the back of the castle.
Larvesta happily explained to Oshawott, Larv.
That is the special garden Lucian made for us to play in.
Oshawott eyes sparkled. As a water type, the lake and fountains were irresistible. Lillygant and the others also gazed longingly at the bright flowers and clean grass below. Seeing this, Elif was slightly taken aback. These magical beasts seemed quite interested in Prince Lucien's garden? That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.